Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Dr. Cybersecurity. I'm Dr. Mansur Hasib, and my very first guest today is Dr. Dwayne Hodges.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Dr. Hasib, for having me to be part of these great discussions. Again, my name is Dwayne Hodges. I'm a retired military officer with over 20 years military experience. I've been teaching in the academic community for almost 15 years now. I actually have been teaching in 3 different disciplines, not just cybersecurity. I've taught in the business area, education. I've taught criminal justice and homeland security. Developed lots of courses at the program level and at the institution level. So lots of consultant there sitting on boards. I've consulted internationally with the government and in the private sector. I also run my own business. So I do lots of work with the government. So my full disclaimer is this evening, all the discussions and all the comments that I make are a reflection of mine and don't represent any of the academic institutions, especially the governments that I work with. And I have had the opportunity to teach for Dr. Hasib for several years now. So that's been a great learning experience with me. I want to jump right into it. So I want to ask some good questions, and I want to infer some little commentary to kind of shake it up a little bit. So
all right. No, I was looking forward to this conversation. It was actually great to see you. You look young and fresh, and I'm like, what is going on here? You got to tell everybody your secret of that too.
Yeah. Over 2 decades in the military, eating as healthy as I know how. I have a wife that looks like she's 20 and runs 8 to 10 miles a day, so I run behind her.
Okay, that's good.
Biking, fishing, outside, cutting grass. All the
Okay. Now that we know your secrets, let's go into your topics and questions. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful to see you.
Yeah. So listen. I think that education's continuing, and we gotta make decisions based off of information. How do we change, right? I spent lots of years, actually teaching CISSP, Security Plus, and so I submitted to the need for certifications because of the baseline industry requirements, especially in the military. But for a period of time, I became very frustrated that I almost thought that there was a lot of government bodies that were exploiting the need and requirement for these certifications by charging so much money. And so I at one point I took a stance that, I don't think we need these certifications. But almost lately, I almost have a difference of a feeling simply because working with organizations from the retail level all the way up to senior leadership, I see lots of smart people that are great engineers, great architects, but what's actually getting them in trouble at the retail level and at the organization level is not that they can't do configuration management, not that they actually can't build and design systems securely, but they're doing little tiny things wrong that we actually teach in these certification programs. So my question for you is, what is your feeling on the difference in the importance of certifications versus education? How important is it? And to the second part, do you think that either academia or the industry is exploiting the requirements for certification? So are we doing something wrong? Is it necessary?
All right, first of all, let me go to the first aspect, which is are certifications necessary? So that's a blanket statement, and I would have to say that it really depends on the job. For example, if you are going to be a Cisco network architect, architecting massive Cisco networks, then probably the Cisco CCIE certification would be very good for you, right? And that would also, that certification I know to be very hands-on. You cannot pass that certification by just memorizing a few things and never doing anything. You see, so a lot depends on what certification we're talking about and what job we're talking about. That's number one. Now, the second part of your question, which was that the difference between academia and certifications. Well, having been in both worlds and having been a professor yourself and earned your doctoral degree, you probably know that the main goal of academia is to literally change your brain forever, to start thinking at a particular level. At the bachelor's degree, you think broad, maybe you do get some discipline, but even at most undergraduates often do not discover themselves until much later in their career. They get some domain, for example, in my case, I had a bachelor's degree in economics and politics. Well, did I ever use those things? Of course I used them, but I never really went deeper into those fields. But my brain was exposed very broadly. So that's what a degree is supposed to do. But then it also depends on which school. So one of the things, having taught and observed and done external reviews for many universities and curriculum, one of the things that I noticed was that a lot of universities were dumbing down education for the benefit of the faculty and the administration, okay? What do I mean by that? Well, instead of doing written work, instead of doing project work, they were feeding out all these quizzes, all right? Well, quizzes do not challenge the brain the same way where I give you an actual problem to solve or an analysis to do, and then I write a report on that analysis would be original work. There's nothing about memory there. You can be open book, everything, right? And so that is the biggest thing. What I noticed was those automated testing and all of that was great for the professors. They hardly had to do any work. Everything is scored automatically, graded automatically. But what does it do for the student? It stops them from thinking. And that same thing is also happening with many of the certification exams. So if the certification exam is of the same type, then guess what? It's going to produce the same kind of result. So again, everything depends on, this is why I have always said that the program or the university does not matter. What matters is who is in charge of the program. The program at the last university where I was dramatically different from the time when I joined. And then now that I've left, that program is completely changing again, because remember, every program takes on the personality and the desires and the goals of the program supervision, the chairs. When I took that program over, my goal was very simple: to make it the #1 cybersecurity program in the world. That was my single most goal. So I focused on quality because I figured that if I focus on quality, the money will automatically come, and it did. Well, that reputation, the money followed the reputation, because as soon as that program won the first award as the best cybersecurity higher education program in the USA, which was unprecedented in the university's history, that university was 70 years old, and yet in 70 years, they never won an award like that. That is the key, you see?
So that question that I asked and that answer is actually really interesting that you said that, because that drove, I kind of wrote these questions in a manner that I felt they kind of fed off of each other. Mm-hmm. And so the second question, and I'm going to ask the second and third question together because I think they work together. Are universities being staffed correctly? They were being ran by staff and not faculty. And does this paradigm include the part-time faculty? You know, we actually depend. One of the universities that I taught for 8 years, I think the 75% were part-time experts and practitioners in our field. And I saw maybe 30% full-time, probably never touched the system, did a lot of reading. And then the second part to that is, does the traditional Bloom's taxonomy work for cybersecurity 2020? I mean, can we actually do what you're saying? Can we actually go out and build competency-based cybersecurity outcomes at a course level using 1980 Bloom's taxonomy?
So you actually taught in the program that I designed. And while I paid attention to the Bloom's taxonomy, and I knew that entire thing, you saw all the projects that were in that program. The projects are smaller scale versions of real world projects. You as a practitioner would know that. See, I practiced for 30 years. That was the difference. And you talking about, are they staffed properly? Absolutely, they are not staffed properly. because I was probably the first program chair to have actually worked in the industry for 30 years before I went to become the program chair. That was my first program chair role. Whereas in most universities, what happens is that a person earns their bachelor's degree, the master's degree, PhD, and never works a day in their whole life. And now they're running an academic program straight from books. So the projects they're designing, I don't even know what they're designing, because that is part of the problem, you see? And I think that, and you're talking about competency-based, can it be done? Of course it can be done. I did it, right? You taught in that program. And we have graduates from that program whose brains and everything was changed forever. Not only did the program win award, guess what? The graduates won awards, and they are mentoring others like crazy. So we can see by the results, and they're mentoring others right now. If you go on LinkedIn, you will see many of my graduates actually mentoring tons of others, because that's one of the deals that I have with any of my mentees, that if I mentor you, you must mentor at least 10 others in your lifetime. And what happens is that mentorship is almost like a passion. Once you start doing it, you feel so good about seeing other people succeed that you start to do more. So every one of my mentees have actually been mentoring tons of others. I saw another mentee of mine. He has a business now. So I think he wants to give back at this time when so many people are getting laid off and things like that. He put up a post on LinkedIn and basically said, hey, I want to help anybody who wants to transition, get a job and all that. I was so proud of him. Nobody ever asked him to do that, but he's doing it on his own.
Yeah.
These are the leaders that we're building.
I think I'm pushing at the edge of your time here, but I want to get your thoughts on lots of talk on the CISSP equivalent of a master's. I have a CISSP for years. You've had a CISSP for lots of years. I taught it. I know how I feel. Tell me how you feel.
Well, actually, the funny thing is that one of the episodes that question was asked. How I feel was that, and maybe it was something that somebody put up there, because sometimes people put up a title of an article just to get some eyes, like the title is bold and brash. But I think even ISC Square was kind of backpedaling on that, because if ISC Square themselves start to think that their CISSP is equivalent to a master's degree, then we're really, really screwing up education, right? Because to me, a master's degree is a leadership discipline designed to, again, help your brain start to think at a very different level, the level of a very complex leader who is able to take unknown situations and make sense out of it, go into uncharted territory and solve the problems. CISSP, yes, it is a leadership certification, but it is not project oriented. We at the end of that certification, nobody knows if I can actually do any projects. The way they rely on that is by giving you that 5-year work requirement, right? The CISSP, a true CISSP, always has to have the 5 years of work requirement, which is vetted and audited, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how they're getting around to see that you actually can do things. But even then, if you notice, they have started to water that down. They now have a CISSP where the 5-year work requirement isn't there.
Yeah, the associate.
Exactly. So why are they doing that? Probably, again, focus on the money. And this is part of the problem. People need to stop focusing on the money so much. Focus on the quality, focus on the competency. The money will come. It has never failed me. Every time I focus on quality, it has never failed me. Money just followed the quality.
You mentioned a lot about mentorship, and I mean, I admire your heart of gold. I mean, the mentorship is huge. I guess I become worried that the problem of cybersecurity is probably as big as a globe. We have imaginary boundaries. And so this is just a huge endeavor. And it appears to me that so many people, at least the emails and the calls, the requests that I get, they have the word free in their sentence or at the end of the sentence. And so how does the problem so big always end up in I need free? And I understand the need for mentorships, but even recently a university every university I've talked to, they've always had a CISSP study club, and we need the adjuncts to help with that. I mean, how do you get around a problem so big, but everybody needs free help, mentorships? Are we going to solve it using mentorships and free, or are we going to fund the effort?
Right. So this is true. This is a big problem. And the way I've done it is I have some criteria. So if people are actually enhancing my work, reading my work, and they've done their own work. So I don't mentor people that haven't invested in themselves. But if somebody's investing in themselves, I get a lot of blind mentorship requests, just like you do probably. And they have not read any of your work or any of my work. So I first asked them, I had a question today like that. And I asked him, I said, have you read my book? And the answer was no. I said, then start there first. Read the free stuff I've already provided. See, the people that I'm mentoring have already done their due diligence. Many of them have all gone through the program. They've certainly started with my book and all that. Then they ask me much more refined, pointed questions that are much more relevant and really don't take that much time. So there's a difference between mentoring and tutoring. Mentoring, true mentoring, shouldn't take that much time, especially if the mentee is golden and they're doing their due diligence. It doesn't take much time. Yeah. So that's how I would say strike the balance. And you can mentor a lot by doing these kinds of things where it scales. Like you share these ideas, share these conversations, share these answers, and now they're out there for anybody to consume. So that's another way that I mentor. That's part of the reason I'm doing this also. But anyway, it was fantastic catching up with you, Dr. Dwayne Hodges. It was wonderful to see you. So I hope to talk with you again. And now I'm going to bring in Ranjith Mathew, who's coming to us from all the way from Ottawa, Canada.
Hi, good evening, Doctor. It's a pleasure to be in this and nice to meet you all. So myself, Ranjith Mathew, I work as the manager for student co-op placements and employment at Wellness College. So if you know about Wellness College, you can see it from my background. So Wellness College is Canada's oldest private career college. We are 154-year-old, 1 year older than Canada. We are the leaders in cybersecurity training in Canada, the only private career, only educational institution got approved by Canadian Armed Forces and DND for cyber operator training. If I keep on describing the history of 154 years, this 1 hour is not sufficient for that. My president and CEO, Rima Aristocrat, is also there in this meeting to support me. Thank you so much for joining with us. So her leadership skills, which is supporting us to promote the woman in technology. We are also promoting a veteran-friendly training program. That means we are affiliation with the DND to provide training people with uniforms and the people who are already retired from the military. So both we are serving. Her leadership skills again brought us, so I have to mention this, 30 years in the president and CEO role, which is again amazing, which is the 15th president, I cannot even imagine, the 15th president of this prestigious organization. And I'm very proud to handle this role of employment and student placements from last 4 years. Yeah, so my goal is personal branding. I've been watching you very closely, Dr. Mansur. I'm glad that I met you when you came to Ottawa. You had been to our college. You did a wonderful presentation.
Absolutely amazing. You talk about Rima. Rima has become one of my dearest friends. So, and I know exactly how she is an amazing CEO. She's a CEO after my heart.
That's awesome. Yeah, so her leadership skills actually brought us with a lot of collaborations. The leading cybersecurity companies like Sophos, Fortinet, Checkpoint, Sonic Wall, Bell, and that list is keep on growing. Today also we had a wonderful meeting with, I don't know I'm allowed to say that, but it's going to announce soon that it's going to be another wonderful partnership. So we've been maybe one of the only college in Canada with a lot of academic collaborations like Fortinet Academy, Sophos Academy, Checkpoint Academy, and now we are talking to 2 or 3 other more academies. And I know that your book, we are collaborated with you and your education, which part of our education, which is amazing. So right now I'm into employment. I'm looking into student placements.
Mhm.
And my specific question to you is how important it is the personal branding. I know I've been watching you very closely. How important is this personal branding for students to find employment in the field of studies?
So this is a very exciting question, actually. Personal branding for students is absolutely critical. But there is this concept of personal branding. We often know what it is once we see somebody with a personal brand. But most often, what people have trouble with is, how do I get there? How do I develop that personal brand? And for most students, that is not easy. So for example, in the program that I had in my previous university, every time I have taught any kind of a program, the personal branding component has always been part of the curriculum. And I teach that. So my recommendation to you, honestly, this is something Willis College might consider. I actually do have a course on personal branding. It's a 2-week course, very short, 2 sessions only online. I would recommend you see if either college or the students themselves are willing to take that course. It doesn't cost a lot, but what will happen as a result of that course, the first session, we will talk about what personal branding is and what the methodology is, and then we will give them an assignment to do that will help them develop their personal brand and a plan, a 1-year plan to develop that. Let us say that they did that at the beginning of your program, or maybe after they enrolled in your program. Your students would do amazing things during the program because now they will be focused on building that brand and refining it, because it will take about a year to refine that brand. Branding is also experimentation. Okay, my brand didn't happen just like that. You are also learning your branding. I can see that. Okay, you have accumulated a lot of things. Part of that is also public speaking. So learning how to speak properly in public speaking. So that's another part of your core curriculum. You might think maybe you should have a Willis College Toastmasters club. Maybe you don't have that now, but consider having that. You are now online all over Canada. Well, guess what? All Toastmasters all over the world is online right now, right? So you could be the founding members of that Willis College Toastmasters Club. That would do amazing things for your students.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My next question is, our end goal is to find meaningful employment opportunities to students, graduates. Also part of the program, there is a mandatory practicum placement. So I am also looking into new collaborations with cybersecurity employers. So is there any advice from you that how to get more collaboration? So in your organization, how do you build this relationship and how to build new partnerships with companies, leading companies?
I'm almost thinking I should hire you to do that, because the way I see you going, you're already doing it right.
Yeah,
So
I am able to do it, and it's all because of my president's support.
Yes.
I'm proud to say that in the month of May and June, we had 20 student placements. So that's around 100% placement during this pandemic. And it's all happened because of the support of my president and her connections and this community in large.
What you're doing is exactly the way it should be done, which is you're networking, you're bringing them on, you're inviting them as speakers, you're giving them a platform, and you're taking pictures with them and promoting their business, and at the same time promoting your university. That's exactly the way this works. The modern world, that is how it works. Advertisements doesn't work anymore. It's all cross-brand promotion. The more powerful your network, the more your net worth, right? Your net worth is as big as your network.
Thank you so much. So that means I'm going in the right direction.
Absolutely. I think you could give a lesson on that.
Oh my goodness. No, thank you. So one more question. I know you have more than 10,000 connections in your LinkedIn. I'm also reaching to that level. When I joined Wellness College 4 years back, my connection was only 1,200, and now it's gone more than 11,000 in 4 years, which means, you know, I'm struggling to maintain this connection. How do you manage? I can see that you're best in social media. You're everywhere. How do you manage your network? How do you handle these people?
Well, it's a relationship. It's not a management of the network. It's the relationship and giving value back to your network. So this is the main reason why I create content, because my network appreciates the high quality content that will be beneficial to their personal and work lives that I'm putting out all the time. And that is why, so I recommend everybody, even if it's 15 minutes a day, spend 15 minutes a day. It is much better to spend 15 minutes every day than to spend 4 or 5 hours in one day, once a week. No, that doesn't work. Relationship, think about love. If you're married, okay, you're gonna love your partner once a week or once a month. That's not gonna work very well. It has to be nurtured, and that relationship has to be built by giving each other value and feedback. Engagement is also very important. So that's why, if you notice, if somebody puts a comment on any one of my messages, even if it's a very small thank you, I engage. That shows respect, mutual support. It says, I heard you, thank you for the comment. A lot of things are said without saying, right? And so even a simple like, if somebody does something, so I go out of my way, if somebody achieves something, they put a certificate there, I put out a like. Or I would try to, what do you call that, tag their name when I'm responding so that they will not miss that post. Everybody loves their names, right? Nobody dislikes their name. So it is important. It's the same thing. I acknowledge you, because in all this noise that is going on, if you don't tag people, it's very hard for them to find one of your comments. But if you tag them, they're going to find it.
Awesome. Any advice to my graduating students?
Well, with your graduating students, the same advice that I would give any student, that your learning actually never ends, right? You have just developed your brain up to a certain point, and now you got to continue taking it onwards. Mentoring, visiting the conferences, networking, going out and visiting with companies, just going to companies and learning about them without any agenda in mind, just going to learning. It's amazing. I mean, I am 30-year veteran in the industry, but I'm still networking like crazy. I go to every conference where I'm invited to speak. I network, and if I'm invited to speak, I don't just go speak and run away. I network with the people. I exchange business cards. So some people wonder why I still carry business cards, because that's a great way to start the conversation. And my back of the business card is always plain. I don't have any writing or any glossy on the back of my card, mainly because chances are very high that somebody who has a conversation with me is going to write down some notes on that business card so that they can follow up with me or know why they met me, where they met me, and those kinds of things. Because I do the same thing. You see, that's one of the key things. I recommend every one of your graduates start to get a business card before they graduate and after they graduate, and definitely network and build that relationship.
These are all awesome. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being in this meeting. Thank you.
Well, wonderful to talk to you. So give my best regards to Rima. If she's in the audience, we will talk later. But at this point, I want to bring in Kristin Judge.
Hi, welcome. So thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here.
Wonderful.
I
welcome.
am a former elected official. That's how I got my start in cybersecurity. I was a county commissioner, and through that work, I was introduced to people at the former White House, and I supported the Department of Homeland Security, the former White House, and other federal agencies on educating elected officials on their role in cybersecurity. Back in, let's say, 2009, most elected officials weren't really too keen on being involved in anything that had to do with cybersecurity. They didn't quite understand it or know what it was. So I went around with federal agencies to brief governors and state representatives, mayors, and let them know that their role in cybersecurity was policy and budget. We've come a long way, but we still need to do a lot of educating for elected officials. After that, I went on and created the Digital Divas program in Michigan, which I'm sure you would appreciate, and Tamiko would too. And we brought young women from Detroit that were in middle school and high school to Eastern Michigan University, which also has a great cybersecurity program. Not as good as yours, I'm sure, but another great program, National Center for Excellence. And that program's now been going on for over 8 years. We bring in 400 or 500 young women from Detroit every year, and they meet other women who have been in cybersecurity careers. And I've also worked with NICE, the National Initiative on Cybersecurity Education, since the very beginning. I was a co-chair of one of the NIST working groups, and I really love to use their stuff when I'm mentoring students to show them what could a career in cybersecurity look like. You pick the type of skills you might want to have, the type of things you'd like to do, and it tells you the name of what that career could be. Love the NICE Workforce group. I'm a LinkedIn Learning author, and I created a LinkedIn Learning course based on the NIST cybersecurity framework for small businesses. Nice. So for all of us cybersecurity geeks out here, I created a NIST cybersecurity framework course for small businesses. And then I worked with Google at my last job to educate congressional staff on two-factor authentication and security. Don't ask me where congressional leaders keep their passwords. You don't want to know. And I'm on the advisory board of the Executive Women's Forum and have recently been working with the World Economic Forum on cybercrime issues and the New York State Cyber Task Force. So I'm really focused now on the issues of cybercrime, prosecutions, how do we help victims, and how do we stop some of these bad guys.
This is absolutely amazing. So wonderful of you to come on the show, Kristin. And also so wonderful of you to hire one of my superstar graduates, Tamiko. So how's that working out?
Amazing. I'm so excited to have her. I actually noticed her on your LinkedIn or her LinkedIn doing one of her raps, and her energy and her passion was contagious. And everybody at our nonprofit has a passion for what we do. And that's what I look for first, is passion when I'm hiring. The second thing is obviously the skills and the background and the great education like Tamiko has. But the first thing I look for is that passion, and she certainly showed
you
that.
are a CEO after my heart, because that's exactly what I used to hire for. Also, somebody who is like on autopilot, and all I have to do is say, oh, go this direction or that direction, or even tell them, this is the direction I want to go. How can you help me? This is wonderful.
Right. I'd have to get her to work a little bit less. She's working harder than me. She's not supposed to work harder than the CEO. So I want her to take some time off. So
that's the beauty of passion. I don't think she realizes she's working. So that's the beauty of passion. Most of the time you're having fun and you're just enjoying it. It's not work.
That's right. Yeah. If your work becomes work, then you've lost your way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So what I'd love to talk a little bit today about, not necessarily exactly a question, but just have a discussion with you about, all the new COVID scams that we're seeing, and the fact that this work from home and school from home has opened people up to more vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for your business, I think that you don't probably appreciate more people falling victims of crime, because even though that means greater numbers, that doesn't necessarily mean that you will have the resources to support them probably. So yeah, I mean, this is one of the main reasons why I have always argued for educating everyone on everything. And if you talk to Tamiko, you probably have heard her tell you that I've always said cybersecurity is everything. So just like, for example, right now, learning to use a computer is as vital as learning to use a typewriter was, say, 30 years ago, right? So now, using proper usage of these machineries and all these things, tools that we use has become so vital. So that is what I would recommend, is continue to go on that education mode, build more and more educators or people who can teach people. I was just talking to Tammy this just during the earlier networking about just that. I believe there's a huge business there in just teaching people how to use things. We may call it cybersecurity, but it's not really cybersecurity. I want to teach you productivity and innovation and how to really use the technology to power your business forward. I think there's a huge opportunity in that, Kristin.
Well, and how to do it in a safe manner. You know, many times when I've been doing public speaking, I'll do an event for small business, and of course the media will say, well, you've been talking about small businesses. What do we do differently for consumers? Like, well, it's the same message. You know, we may have to tailor a little bit, but good cyber hygiene is always good cyber hygiene. And I'm really excited that now, because of our work, we were a one-person show. I started in 2018. We now have 30 people on our payroll, and we're getting federal funds from DHS, DOJ, and private sector. And we now have an actual place for citizens, consumers, and small businesses to go if they are a victim of cybercrime. If they go to fraudsupport.org, they can report, they can recover, and then they can reinforce their security. So there are resources out there, but it's just hard to go into Google and say, I've been hacked, where do I go? But hopefully now we're starting to funnel folks to the right place to get the help that they need.
No, I really admire your mission. I actually saw one of your presentations or interviews it was, and that's when I was very intrigued. And it was about the same time, actually Tomiko had just been hired, and she mentioned that I should go visit and watch that. And I watched it. I loved it. I love your company mission. I think that you're doing great things. More people should be supporting these kinds of things because the help is essential, and it's more about the education, right? Because again, that's what you're doing. You're educating them,
down to
empowering.
education, and it all comes down to relationships, like you were talking about. The only reason we've been successful is over the years I've built those relationships to be able to then go call someone and say, hey, and they knew me and they believed in me. And so, you know, being true to yourself and creating this person that people can trust is very key. And I know that that's what you focus on too.
Yes. I believe integrity in your own mission, and then being true to yourself, you're being true, authentic, and being available to people is the only way. There is no other way.
Yeah. One of the things that I find, and I wonder if you have any experience with, helping students get internships. You know, in Michigan here, I've mentored many students at Eastern Michigan University and Michigan State and others. And there is a disconnect between the companies who need interns and the students who are looking for interns. And unlike you, many of the universities don't necessarily have someone who's there to help connect the students. So have you found, besides the Cybersecurity Student Association, have you found other organizations that are helping connect the interns to the actual job, internships? Have you had any success with that?
Career centers are very useful. So this is another reason why career centers, university career centers, are often not staffed properly. So this is one of the things that I've always lobbied. So one of the reasons that in my previous university, my program was successful was because I personally had a very solid partnership with the VP of Career Services.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, when our university had the massive layoff, she was the one who actually told me, hey, there are all these other opportunities that you ought to look at. Yeah. That's the kind of relationship we had. And because it was a two-way street. She could never be successful without us faculty members going there to also coach and mentor the students who were going to go for job interviews, because they're not subject matter experts. They can do the matchmaking, but I would take my faculty members, I would personally go, I would interact with the students, and I would talk to them about interviewing and all that. But the beautiful thing was that the career services worked with us on vetting the tools that they were developing. Yeah. And then how would they coach the students, et cetera, or how would they do the resume? For example, they would send us a sample resume and say, for a graduate of your program, how should the resume really look like? So that, and we would help and develop one. But now it scales because see, I as a faculty member cannot be doing that for thousands of students, but the career services can do that.
Yeah.
And universities need to be doing this. I don't think most universities are doing this because I'm constantly running into graduates of multiple universities where they have gotten no help.
No help.
And I'm thinking, didn't you just graduate from Joe Blow University? And why would they not do the career services for you? That's part of the package that you pay.
Yeah.
But you see, administrators are not thinking of doing the right thing. Often it's all about getting the tuition, getting the money, somehow graduating the student. Who cares if they can get a job or not? And that is the thing that I'm finding, which is unfortunate. And that is part of the reason I actually came from the business world to academia to try to fix it. And to a certain extent, I'm making change, but a lot of it's an uphill battle because too many of these universities have these faculty members and administrators who are accountable to nobody because they have tenure and nobody can really get rid of them. And they have never worked a day in their life. And that system used to work maybe 40, 50 years ago, but I don't think it works anymore.
Yeah, and I think
they have also not digitized.
The success that I did have, I found professors that cared about and wanted to be involved. And once they got involved, especially at Eastern Michigan University, they're professors like you that really care about the students.
Yes.
And they were.
That's what it takes. If you get those professors, the students are golden.
Yeah.
And they're going to be successful because it's that little bit of mentorship. Even right now, I'm in Stevenson University only a few months, but already some of the students that are going through my hands, they are actually appearing in interviews. They're doing public speaking. I mean, it's pretty amazing. One of them actually appeared in one of my conversation series, and you should see her interview. 15 minutes, golden.
Great. That's fantastic. Well, it's
my
great.
grandfather saw it and said, "Oh my God, that's my granddaughter. I didn't even know this was her granddaughter. His granddaughter."
That's great. That's great. Wow, that's wonderful.
So that's what's going on. So what else? Do you have any other topics or questions or you want to talk about?
Sure. You know, we just announced scamspotter.org with Google. We did a big launch last week, and we're trying to help people spot a scam before it actually happens. So Scam Spotter is a great resource to share with seniors, especially in your life. So I want to make sure that people know that that's out there. We can really stop some of these bad guys if we educate, like you said, educate the consumers, and then hopefully we'll be able to make it not so lucrative.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for coming on this program and helping us understand a little bit more about what you do, Kristin. And now I'm going to bring in Dr. James Williams.
Well, hello, everyone. This has been a dynamic discussion. Again, Dr. Hasib, I want to thank you for inviting me. A little bit about my background. I am a retired Army officer, 31 years of service. My career has spanned everywhere from human capital management to logistics and certainly cybersecurity and information assurance. I can recall 9/11 when I first got into the information assurance phase. It was an untapped area. No one was securing their networks, but everyone was securing their jobs. So go from there till now. My claim to fame is when I was stationed in Hawaii, I had an opportunity to travel to the Philippines and speak to those officials. If you can imagine the Filipino government using Yahoo to conduct business on the day-to-day operations. My team was able to go in, scan the networks, and our findings were disturbing, so much so that we showed the 2-star general at the Philippines how vulnerable his network was simply using the commercial off-the-shelf Yahoo. Wow. They were stunned. This was in 2012. So vulnerabilities are not necessarily new to the United States, but around the world. And I always use this saying, which I probably should copyright: cybercrime is alive and well, and it's coming to an IP address near you. With that being said, recently retired, I am now in academia, and I look forward to working with you, Dr. Hasib, this fall. I'm so excited about that. But I also teach as an adjunct at the University of Phoenix, not necessarily in cybersecurity, but in business communications, innovative leadership, because as your book states, which I have read, it is important to be a leader in the space and not technical. Technical skills can be taught. Leadership and communication skills, you either have them or you don't. So I teach that in business communications at the University of Phoenix, also while in Hawaii. If that isn't enough, I'm also trying to tap into speaking and personal branding myself, but I'm going to park that aside right now and leave it there. So
okay. That is
I'm
wonderful.
excited.
What an introduction. My goodness. No wonder I wanted to talk to you. I knew this would be a good conversation. Well, thank you very much for coming on. So what do you want to talk about, Dr. James Williams?
Awesome. And again, let me thank Dr. Hodges for his service as well, fellow veteran. So the first thing I want to talk about is just today, I read an article at the Chronicle of Higher Education where there is a lot of pushback from professors who do not wish to teach at the university this fall because of COVID-19. They feel as though their civil rights are being impeded upon, for lack of a better word. Not so much that they feel that they are vulnerable to having the symptoms, but just the idea of not feeling comfortable. And they're getting a lot of pushback as we're discussing this summer what the fall schedule is going to look like for all education. And I wanted to know what your thought was. And the university, by the way, was Notre Dame.
Well, what is my thought? My thought is very simple. To me, the safety of every life, particularly the students, faculty, and staff, are vital. And I think that any university that starts to make decisions on their own without their state governor's office and their governor machinery behind them is making a rash decision. Because this, one of the things that I learned from economics is that even a single human life has multi-million dollars worth of value. Of course, the typical value is limitless, right? But even then, there is an economic value also, which is that lifetime of output or whatever that the person is going to produce. So even under those calculations, saving human life is always financially a better thing. And it's a crazy idea to ever think that, oh, we should be willing to sacrifice a portion of our population of students and faculty just so that we can bring in all those tuition and everything. No, I think that this is one of the biggest reasons I have always been a proponent of online education always being a part of a university's offering. So one of the things that has always bothered me were there's some professors who have never even used their learning management system. They've never logged into it. And I was reading articles about that, just like you were reading about that. I was reading that. I said, how is that even possible? I taught face-to-face classes. I have taught online classes. For me, not to log into the learning management system would be unthinkable. Because to me, I use the learning management system to enhance even a face-to-face learning that I always do. That's how sometimes students collaborate. That's how I was able to have students read each other's work sometimes. Because see, one of the things that I always had is students must also learn from each other. So I would often have students do different projects, but then share the projects out so that they could read each other's work and learn from that. Because see, you cannot plagiarize if you're doing different things.
Sure.
Right? So, but you can learn. For example, if a person was, say, researching the MedStar breach, and then somebody else was researching the Anthem breach, well, what is wrong with them learning from each other? Nothing, right? And they used to learn a lot from that. So that I always use the learning management system for that. I also used it for drafts, because I always believed that I should never be the judge. I should be the coach. I should be teaching. So I never graded anybody's first draft. I just want to make sure that you're on the right track. Because again, it's a project-oriented class. So I would have them give me a draft. Give me the draft. And I would also have it peer-reviewed, because peer reviewing is also an art. You see? So I would have the students peer review each other. and give each other constructive feedback on how this is going. And then I would provide feedback on how this is going, so that a student should never fail. If the student is doing the work, that student should never fail. If a student is doing the work and the student still fails, then it's my fault, it's the professor's fault.
That's excellent.
So this is what I would recommend. Every university needs to have safety first.
Sure.
We just did half of this semester went online. So I actually took care of 75 students this term. Not a single person failed. Can you believe that?
That's awesome.
And why did they not fail? Because I gave everybody a multiple chances to succeed. And anybody who did the work, I mean, it would be crazy not to take the opportunity, right? So somebody got 50% on something, on a paper, because they missed a big component. If I wanted them to do a root cause analysis, they didn't do root cause analysis. I said, look, if you don't do root cause analysis, you cannot get the grade for this work. Go. So can I revise? Of course you can revise. Go do the root cause analysis, bring it back to me. And then they did better. Now guess what happened? They learned, and they told me about that. They said, Professor, this is a very good way to learn, because we shouldn't judge people on where they start. We should judge people on where they end.
Agreed. And by the way, once they get into corporate space, they're going to have to go back and revise projects as well. I'd like to also address Kristin's point about interns. What I also didn't mention is that I'm in a unique position. I work for Northrop Grumman, and I'm in management capacity in systems cyber engineering. This week, we hired 70 interns. We're doing something very unique this year because amidst the COVID outbreak, we do not have our interns coming into the building. We're doing remote internships for the entire summer. I have 2 that I'm working with right now.
Yep.
It's a new concept. And one other thing I want to mention to Kristin's point is many of these interns indicated that because of budgetary constraints, their colleagues were offered internships, paid internships, but because of budgetary constraints due to COVID outbreak, they had to have their letters rescinded. So I wanted to make sure to let them know how very fortunate Northrop Grumman is to have a budget that still speaks to bringing in valuable added talent. So what I would say on that note is it would probably be very important to look at some of the bigger contracts, bigger companies that have a budget for the types of work you want to do, especially in cyber. So that's the other thing.
Yes.
And I know my time is running short.
No, you're doing fine.
And addressing Dr. Hodges' issue about CISSP versus, I've heard this throughout your conversations, Dr. Hasib, and I've listened to all of them. And in my company in particular, because we are a defense contractor, and this is for everybody who's out there listening, it depends on the work. Because Northrop Grumman requires their business and the work that we do from the customer, pick any 3-letter agency of your choosing, right. That customer would like to see the certification. And as a company, we have to follow that, because if we want to bring profits into the organization,
yep.
You can have the degrees, you can have all the bells and whistles, you can be retired military like I am, but they need to see that you at least have, I'll say, for example, Security Plus. Yep. That gets you in the door. So in some instances, if you just have that calling card, it can get you in the door. And places like my company, we can further train you once you're in. It is unfortunate that CISSP, CISAs, and other certifications are alike, seems to be the bells and whistles, but I will tell you that customers are looking for that and bringing on those type of individuals. Leads me to my question. So I am a 30-year retired military. I have a bachelor's in computer information systems, a technical degree, but my master's and PhD is in public management and leadership, even though I was able to acquire adjunct jobs. So why do I say this? You have to be able to brand yourself at these universities to convince them how you can add value to those students. And if you have industry experience, 30 years in the military, I tell you, serving your country for the liberties that we now have should be enough to convince them to at least give you a shot. So I bring that up to say that now that I'm in this space, I was actually contemplating, and my wife doesn't even know I'm about to say this, going back to get a master's in cybersecurity just as a buffer. And I wanted to know what your thoughts were, because you've mentioned that in the past in terms of having that breadth of knowledge and sort of being able to validate your experience. And I wanted to know what you, now I'm already in the space. I'm at a position in jobs where everyone would like to be, but I still wonder if that's something I should consider. Your thoughts?
Excellent question, actually. This was something that we grappled with ourselves in my previous university when we were looking at a shortage of qualified professors, because we were finding people with the terminal degrees, but because this field is so new that people hadn't gone through some of the things that we would need, and they wouldn't really qualify to even teach in my program, for example. So I actually had some scholarships. I actually groomed some professors who had PhDs or JDs. So some of them were lawyers. So I always wanted a terminal degree in somebody. I didn't care whether it was a JD or whatever, or even an MD. It didn't matter to me, but then I did put them through half of my master's program at least, so that they earned up to that, and then immediately that would qualify them to teach that. And by that time, some of them were so inspired, they saw that they are actually learning something different. So my recommendation is, don't just get a master's degree, vet the program, see who you're gonna learn from, what you're gonna learn in there. Especially nowadays, if you're gonna go there, I would go with a forensics heavier program. So if a program has a heavier dose of forensics, that's probably going to be very valuable to you, because there are some masters that don't have any forensics at all. I would go with a blended program. I wouldn't go with just a pure policy program or a pure technology program. I would go with a program that has technology components, forensics components, policy components, everything, a kind of a blended kind of a program.
What's your thought on certificate programs that have those same things without getting a full master's degree?
Well, the certificate program, the CISSP is certainly a great blended program of everything, right? Because one of the things about the CISSP is the leadership component, because if you don't know how to think as a leader, so this is the funniest thing, that some people, I didn't know that my book was actually helping people even pass the CISSP by elevating their level of thinking in the leadership side. I had no idea about that, but then there are some people that told me that, hey, my book helped them prepare for the CISSP. I said, that I never thought about, because I was so in it. I was already a CIO when I took the CISSP, right? For me, when I was looking at those questions and the answers, every answer is a correct answer.
Sure.
But I had to pick the best answer.
That's
well,
right.
You will never pick the best answer unless you have a leadership brain.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, let me
leadership
rephrase
is
the
all
question.
about risk management, thinking about strategy, thinking about the mission, and then figuring out what is the best approach, right?
Yes. Let me rephrase that question, Dr. Hasib. I didn't mean the certification. I meant the certificate from a university that has all the components, but not a master's degree. That's what I meant to ask.
I think that if you already have a doctoral degree, a certificate program like that could be beneficial. And that's one of the things that I did do, because it at least gets you the foundational stuff very quickly and gives you that foundation. And hopefully, because you already have that complex brain, you might be able to self-teach yourself from the rest of it, but maybe the first few projects and everything could be very helpful. So normally, if you didn't have that, I would say no, because I'm not a big believer in certificate kinds of programs, because I believe that it produces half-baked graduates, and I was never about that. Right. I turned down many opportunities to do that. I wanted to run a degree program. All right, well, this has been absolutely wonderful, Dr. James Williams. So fantastic talking with you. So I am going to stop the recording, and then we will be able to chat at leisure.